Hello, everyone, and welcome to UnZOOsual Careers, where we explore the variety of careers in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math at the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. My name is Shelley. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'll be your host for today. Before we meet our program's guests, you will see two polls pop up on your screen. The first, have you ever heard of an animal welfare manager? Yes or no? And two, which of the following subjects do you think is involved in animal research? Science, technology, engineering, art, or math? While you take some time to answer that poll, I'm going to go over the format of today's program. This webinar is live captioned. You'll want to locate that CC button at the bottom of your screen for those to appear. Additionally, you will notice that this program is being interpreted in American Sign Language. This feature is best viewed from a desktop computer rather than a tablet or phone. If you are having trouble with either of these services, please chat us so we can assist you. Remember, this is a webinar, so we cannot see or hear you. However, we do encourage you to engage with us in a number of ways. You already saw that we will be launching polls throughout today's program. Additionally, you'll see that Q&A is open at the bottom of your screen. Use that Q&A at any time throughout today's program to ask questions of our guest, but do try to keep your questions on topic and check under the My Questions column to see if an educator has already answered you. Educators and teachers, if you are streaming on behalf of your entire class, make sure to keep your keyboard close by to chime in on behalf of your class. Today's program will be about 45 minutes with an additional 15 minutes at the end to answer as many questions from the Q&A as time will allow. Lastly, you will see that that chat is open as well for you to message us. And right now I want you to locate that chat and tell us your name, where you're joining us from, and if you've ever researched or if you could research an animal, what animal would you want to research? So while you take a second to find that chat, I'm going to quickly introduce you to our team helping me behind the scenes today. Today we have Erica, Kaden, Jess, Emily, and Anthony also helping to answer your questions. Let's see. Hi, Vedant, welcome. We have Colin joining us. I see Daniel. Hi, Deborah. Hi, Carol from Illinois. Let's see, who else do we have? Hi, Marin. We have Gina from New Jersey who would love to research pandas. That is quite a hot topic. Hello from Arlington, Virginia. We have Miss Blockland's class all the way from Springfield, Massachusetts. Hi, Jonathan from New York. We have Mrs. Adamowski, her class from 4th grade from St. Margaret School in Maryland. Ferdinand's from California, very cool. We are spanning the country today. We have Emily, Neil and CJ from Washington, Cleveland, Ohio. More Alexandria, Virginia. It's so fun to see folks from both local to the National Zoo and folks joining us from across the country. We have Miss Minnick's class from Beaver Creek, another California, so exciting. Well, once again, everybody, welcome to UnZOOsual Careers. I am thrilled to welcome Dr. Betsy Herrelko to today's program. Hi, Betsy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I was worried my camera wasn't going to show up. My name is Betsy Herrelko. I am the Animal Welfare and Research Manager at the National Zoo. Thank you so much for having me today. And I just want to say, whoever's from Beaver Creek, I grew up in Beaver Creek, Ohio. I went to Beaver Creek High School. So I hope that's who you are.
That's awesome. So you said that you are the manager of animal welfare and research. Can you break that down for us a little bit? Why don't we start with animal welfare? What does animal welfare mean?
Yes, absolutely. So animal welfare is referring to an animal's physical and psychological well-being. So what this really means is that I get to team up with all of our zookeepers, veterinarians, nutritionists, and scientists to help keep our animals happy.
Okay, so in thinking about animal happiness, I'm looking already to our audience today. How do you know when your peers, your caregivers, your teachers, when people are happy? Feel free to drop it in the chat. curious to know, how do you tell when humans are happy? Give a couple seconds for those chat answers to come in. And then while you're thinking about how you tell how humans are happy. Yeah, so Daniel already responded, humans smile. Great job, Daniel. What are some other ideas? Yes, Anisha, we smile. So humans smile, they maybe laugh, they might joke around. So now start thinking about how you can tell that animals are happy. If anyone has pets at home or they've seen animals in zoos, how do you tell when an animal might be happy? Oh, Gina said when they engage with others in happy situations. They're calm. That's a great one. Yes, humor, they smile. They made, great job, Noah. Absolutely. Meredith guessed that they smile. Oh, someone said wagging their tail. That's such a great one. My parents' dog would wag their tail. Your cats purr when they're happy. You're all absolutely right. So let's test this a little bit. We noticed that humans smile. So let's throw some pictures up here, and I'm going to launch another poll. And I want you folks at home to tell me whether you think this animal is happy or not. Let's see. Do you think that this gorilla is happy? I'll give you a couple seconds on that poll. Gabriel said yes. Noah's guessing yes. All right, Verdant says big yes. Give a couple more seconds on that poll and closing it in 3, 2, 1. Let's see what folks said. All right, Betsy, we had 91% said that this gorilla is happy and 9% said that they were unsure. What do we think about this gorilla?
Fair. I think that this gorilla looks content. I'm seeing a lot of relaxed posture. I'm seeing looking away from other individuals, not looking around, feet in the air. And so I think for me, that would be one way to think about an animal is happy.
That's great. So what are some of those other ways that you determine whether or not an animal is happy?
It varies by species. And one of the really big challenges we have in animal welfare science is that happy isn't an easy thing to figure out. As Shelley was talking about before, and all of those wonderful ideas you had and shared, we think about it by smiling. We can think about it because we can tell each other that we're happy, but we don't always have that in other animals. So we have to think about their signals, their behavior, their posture. And it could be different from a human to a gorilla, to a chimp, to a giant panda. We can also listen. So we're going to go into some of that, I think, later on in the session.
Yeah, let's see some other examples and see whether our viewers at home can guess whether these animals are happy. Let's see another gorilla picture. What do you folks think? We won't launch a poll for this one, but feel free to drop it in the chat. Again, do you think that this gorilla is happy? Yes or no, or maybe unsure? All right, we got one no in the chat. Lots of no's. We have a sad and angry or a hard to tell. What do you think, Betsy?
I think that hard to tell is more where I'd be leaning. And we might think that this female is sad because she has a frown, because there aren't any kind of curvatures in her face to indicate that she'd be smiling or happy. We also can only see this much of her, so it's a little bit difficult. But gorillas don't have the same smiles that we do. So this just looks like a content gorilla to me, with
Right.
kind of a slightly, we talk about it, resting sadness face. That's just the way they look.
I feel like it's very hard because some of the gorilla features are so similar to humans that we almost expect them to smile to show that they're happy, but we have to remember that not all animals are going to show happiness in the same way as humans. And we actually have one more example. We're going to see another picture. Here we go. Do we think that this chimpanzee is happy? Yes or no? I'm seeing a lot of no's. Feel free to put some reasoning in there. Why do you think that this chimpanzee is not happy? I see some yeses. I see a mad. Why don't you break this one down for us, Betsy?
All right, so this is a fella named Caffsey at Edinburgh Zoo in Scotland. And what it looks like is he's smiling. If we
Yeah.
think about it in human terms, we're seeing teeth, what little teeth he has, and his face is turning up, but you also see a lot of other differences and kind of he's reaching out, which is actually a reach out for reassurance. And if you can learn a little bit more about chimps, you'll learn that it's not a smile, it's a fear grin. So he's actually afraid or anxious. Something's going on in his world. And I happen to know what it is. He was being introduced to others. So there was a lot of fighting going on in this situation.
Wow. So it's such a great example of there's not one overarching symbol of happiness that's across species. So it seems like to even be able to tell whether our animals are happy or not, we need to know so much about their natural histories and their natural behaviors. So what happens in your work here at the zoo? What happens if you come across an animal that maybe isn't as happy as it could be? Where do you go from there?
That's a great question. So for me, as someone who works with teams, then it's usually a team talking to me about it, bringing it up and asking questions. They're the species experts, and I bring animal science to the team. And so we would often talk about what is the context, what are the circumstances with which you're seeing this, and try to unpack what might be triggering this and how can we change it.
Great. So this maybe seems like where some of that research might play a part in you assessing animal welfare and animal happiness. Can you tell us a little bit about the research aspect of your job?
Ooh. I mean, I would love to. It's vast. I get to participate in other people's research. I get to help sign off and get projects going, and I get to team up with keepers and do some of our own research. And that might be because an animal's not feeling so well. We had a chance to work with the sea lion who came to us with the challenge. So we had a lot of brainstorming together to figure out how do we make this environment that much better for this animal. It's working for everybody else. What's going on in her world? All the way to how animals think with primates. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's so great. Can you give some examples of some things that you might give to an animal to maybe increase its welfare or happiness?
Yes, absolutely. And Shelley's gotten in because she was one of our wonderful zookeepers here for many years. So one of the ways in which keepers and anyone who's caring for animals will enrich an environment is by giving something called enrichment. And it's ways that you can add complexity to an animal's world. Often it's going to be in toys and things that we might hide food in. How can we get them thinking about their world like they would in the wild? So I think on the left, this looks like Rose working on some enrichment, and you think, what the heck is that blue barrel? And why does it have kind of pointy things on top? And so this is giving her something to push up against. She's a big girl as this thing is holding up against her. You see brushes on the side. So it's a tactile reinforcing. So she's looking for scratches and just exploring in different ways. Moki's got a chair in the top right corner and a ball because what little guy wouldn't want to just keep, he's touching it with his mouth. He's playing with different things. And then I'm not sure who the tiger is down here, but cats love rolling in things, scent enrichment. You can hide it a lot more in hay than in any other location. And maybe she's just bedding down and getting comfortable.
That's so awesome. So you mentioned that you will conduct some research to help improve animal welfare, animal happiness, but you've kind of touched on a couple of these other studies that you've partaken in. And we're going to hear about a really amazing study that you worked on. I'm going to launch a poll because I want to see who can tell me what the animal that we're going to hear a case study about, what animal this is. So we'll launch the poll, and I realize that the picture will pop up in just a second on your screen. So before we launch into this case study, just curious, does anyone know what animal this is? Is this a seal, a sea lion, a walrus, or a sea dog? Right. Give it a couple more seconds. I'll give you 3, 2, 1. You all did pretty good. All right, 60% got it right that this is a sea lion, although often confused with a seal. So do you want to set up this case study for us, Betsy?
Sure, absolutely. And one kind of key visual trick that helps me for seals and sea lions, you're going to see those ear flaps. And so seals are going to be tucked away. You won't see them. So just as there that mouse is, that's perfect. Thank you. So we have a case study with the sea lion. We had a female who I alluded to this before. She came to us with a challenge where she would vomit up her food and sometimes eat it again. We call that regurgitation and reingestion.
Great. So as you said, this sea lion came to the zoo with this behavior already presented. This isn't a behavior that keepers necessarily would want to see. So you were sort of brought on board to help solve this problem, right?
Yes. So our keepers are already working with our veterinary team because we always want to check first to see, is there a physiological challenge? Is there something medically that we need to do to help this animal thrive? And the vet team came in, from what they were able to do non-invasively, decided, let's look behaviorally. And that's where I came in.
So let's ask our audience again. Here's another poll coming your way. You had a little bit of background about this sea lion. How would you go about solving this problem? Would you conduct a veterinary exam, maybe try some different foods, provide additional enrichment? And then once I hear how you would maybe solve it, let's hear how Betsy went about solving it. Give you a few more seconds on this poll. It's pretty even. All right, give you another 3, 2, 1. Let's see these results. All right, so about 48% said that they would conduct a veterinary exam, followed by trying different foods and then providing additional enrichment. So what did you do to help solve this problem, Betsy?
Those are all great, and they all played a role in what we worked on. So we definitely want to consult with our veterinarians first. So that was already in action, and they got to play a role throughout the whole process. But what we ended up doing is trying to figure out what's in her world that we can change. And because this was about vomiting up food and eating it again, we were trying different foods. We tried different shapes of foods. We tried different kind of consistencies and textures, high fat, low fat. When would we give it? How often would we give it? Who would give it? So many things. And with that, we tried enrichment as well, but food ended up being the biggest contributor to helping this animal get even better.
Wow, that's really neat. So it really just took you observing, noting all of the various different factors that could affect this animal and this behavior, and sort of going through them all and determining what best affects it to change its behavior. So I know that you've done quite a few of other studies, and there's some really other great ones that I would love to talk about. You mentioned again tool use. Before we launch into this, I want our folks at home, have you ever heard of an animal using tools? And if so, write in the chat, what animals have you heard of besides humans that use tools? Let's see what we have. Yes, someone said chimps. Great. Primates for sure. Cows. CJ. Oh, dolphins, chimps. All right, I think we are on the right track. Yes, orangutans, gorillas, and pandas, otters. Amazing. What animal and tool use are we going to talk about today, Betsy?
Oh, I think let's go for a very, very popular species. Let's touch base on giant pandas with tool use.
All right.
So we were wondering collectively, the keepers and myself, can we do any cognitive projects with our bears, particularly with our giant pandas? Can we think about how they process information and solve problems? So what you're seeing here is an adult bear who has a coveted food item out of reach, and they can't reach it on their own. So our big question was, if we put a tool nearby, something that's an extension of themselves, will they slightly adjust it to use it to reach that object?
Okay, so it looks like she's trying to reach that. So how did you go about setting up this study? Just by providing her the tool already? Or was it just seeing if she could find something she already had to use it?
We want to make any study that we do or any enrichment item appropriately challenging. We don't want to give someone calculus who hasn't had all the classes to get there yet. So we don't want to frustrate anyone. So we wanted to place an object that we thought would confidently support her weight and give her enough height to get it nearby. So we decided to place this box as the tool nearby, very close within eyesight. And then our plan was, if she used that, then what if we moved that tool further away? Would she continue to extrapolate and think about how, oh, I did that when it was closer. Does it also work over here?
Okay.
And that's how we set the concept up.
So do we think that she got it, folks at home watching? Do you think that she was able to use that tool to get it? Feel free to put it in there. I feel like we have some people who know quite a bit about a pandas. A lot of people are guessing that she did get it. Or we have a couple no's as well. Did she get it, Betsy?
So unfortunately, no. And maybe that's because giant pandas aren't meant to do this sort of thing. They don't need to do it in the wild, perhaps. Perhaps we designed it in a way that wasn't right for them, but it didn't work out this time. So don't worry, we made sure she got the food reward. It wasn't there forever and she was just yearning for it. We made sure she got it.
Great. And then we do have another video about sort of where the study came from. Now, folks at home, watch this video. Feel free to make some observations in the chat about what you're seeing. But this is really sort of where this, all goofy. This is another panda, mind you. So this looks about to be what you were attempting to prove in the last video.
Exactly. This is what we wanted to see so desperately. And that's where the project originated, by thinking about when our cubs are shorter and smaller, they wanted to reach that little window in the door to hear and to see what keepers are doing on the other side, but they couldn't reach. So we happened upon this going on, and that's how we started designing a study around it. And of course, what would happen is whenever we weren't actively doing the study, one of them would do something like this. So it was, animals are frustrating as much as they are remarkable and amazing. And sometimes I think they do it on purpose. Sometimes it just happens.
Yes. Actually, just to share another funny anecdote about this specific panda, we had figured out that he was getting actually on top of that door. So it felt very much like working backwards of he got up there, but we had no idea how. And it was reviewing all of these camera footage that we realized he was pushing toys up to the door to get up on top of there. That's so funny.
So that whole concept tells us that they can do this. It is happening. Their brain is capable of it. We just struggled to do it in an experimental setting.
Absolutely. So shifting gears a little bit, how does some of your research directly impact the animal care side of things, of improving the welfare and the care of the animals that we have here at the National Zoo?
It varies. Some of my research thinks about bigger picture items and are they capable of doing something? But what is most meaningful to me is when it can be applied and used in practice. So with the Sydney sea lion example, that was focused on how do we make our management practices better and more in line with how this animal experiences the world. And that's why everything has to be collaborative. I had a great opportunity to work with Shelley and the Giant Panda team on figuring out how can we use behavior to identify when we might be able to have an insemination happen to produce a cub. And we can also think about cognitive studies. And is there a lot of complexity that happens around these studies where they're doing a touchscreen task? Are they just focused on that, or are they worried about the rest of their world? So we can use all of that information to help back up what keepers already think.
Yeah. So let's dive a little bit into this. You just mentioned panda reproduction, panda breeding, another panda example, but a really, really cool one. Can you explain again what you mean by what the keepers know, and then sort of what the science or the biology was also telling us and what you did to pair those?
Excellent. So when I talk about what keepers know, I mean our animal care staff in our zoo and so many other zoos have a wealth of information that largely lives up here. and they're great at teaching each other. They're incredibly wonderful at working with animals, identifying behaviors, understanding patterns, and knowing the appropriate way to respond. So my role is to help, how can we turn that into data where we can look at patterns more broadly and talk about it together to make sure we're on the same page.
Great. So looking at the pandas from my many of years as a panda keeper, what we know about their panda breeding is it's a very small window. Females are able to breed for about 24 hours once a year, which is a very small window. And what this picture is really showing us here is how quickly a female's behavior changes to tell from the keeper side what could be going on. So this first picture on the left, you will see Tian Tian on the left of this picture, and he is clearly very interested in what's happening with Mei Shang on the other side of this wall. She clearly doesn't care at all about him, but then how quickly you can go from now to the picture on the right, she's actually very interested in him on the other side. So these are the sorts of behaviors that keepers had been historically monitoring and saying, she's not ready to breed, she's not ready to breed, but now all of a sudden her behavior is telling us, yes, she's ready to breed. So what are some of the behaviors that you were monitoring her for in order to match them up with what her hormones were telling us?
When I came in, it was all about interviewing keepers and finding out what's important, because I've never worked with giant pandas before. So we were largely looking at the male. Does he tell us what's going on? Looking at his vigilance behavior, meaning where you're seeing him in these pictures, he's looking through a window to see into May's yard. There's another one further down in his yard. How often is he tracking her? What about his vocalizations? Is he doing anything that is scent marking? Is he doing anything that might be intimate, say that he's going to be a little bit scary right now and he's upset? So we were tracking these things, and then we started digging a little bit more into May's behaviors, also vocalizations, tail lifting.
Yes.
Whether or not she, sorry, I'm laughing at this picture because I love it with my whole heart. Whether or not she is going to tolerate other people around her. So in this picture, I am so fortunate during Panda Estrus, during this crazy time when Shelly and I would be there. It felt like 24 hours a day, but it was probably 18 to 20, to be fair to us. We'd take a nap and come back. I sit right here in front of this mesh fencing, and I sit there, and it's either really hot or it's really cold, and I just stare at them very quietly, like I'm not there. And I have a touch screen device where I'm recording behaviors. And May goes through this phase that I've now learned from our keepers, where she is kind of just not happy about anything, but then she goes through like a hazy, foggy period. She wants to nap all the time. And in this moment of the picture, she was laying down, my chair squeaked, and she looked up, and as if to say, I did not give you permission to make noise.
Yeah.
And I love this picture forever because of that. But we talk about things like we anthropomorphize. We put human terms to things sometimes to help us understand what's going on. And then we dig deeper into those behaviors to find out if it is the same way that we think it is.
Absolutely. So you were brought in essentially to help quantify or put the data behind the behaviors that the keepers had been already seeing for years and years. Throughout this time, we had also been taking that biological data that was coming from her hormones. And that is what historically the entire reproductive and Panda team had been going off of in order to determine the best time to breed her. Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at this data together. And we're here going to launch another poll. So to give you a little bit background of what we're looking at, this green line, that's her hormone data, that biological data that we got from the science, that we know what her hormones are doing, and they go up, and right when they start to drop is when historically we knew to breed her. So looking at those other color lines, we also have positive vocalizations, negative vocalizations, vigilance, scent marking, and tail lifting. And those were her behaviors that you were monitoring and taking data on. And so this was in real time. So let's launch this poll to see viewers at home, see what you can read off of this graph. Which of the behaviors, besides the hormones, which of the behaviors best aligns with the hormone data? Is it the positive vocalizations, which is the blue line, negative vocalizations is the orange line, vigilance is gray, scent marking is yellow, and tail lifting is, I believe, a light blue. I'll give you a couple seconds on that.
And full disclosure, we took off some of the data information because we haven't published this yet. The hormone is not a rate per minute. I just took off that line altogether. So apologies for the true mathematicians out there.
Wonderful. Oh, we have one in the chat too. All right, I'll give you a couple more seconds on this poll and close it in 3, 2, 1. Let's see what folks think. All right, we had 67% said the positive vocalizations. So what is this graph showing us, Betsy?
It's showing that 67% of you are right in line with what we're thinking. And that's our big, there might be more we can dig out, but what the biggest sign is in here is that when we see a rise in a certain hormone, we suddenly see a rise in those positive vocalizations. The patterns match each other. So that's what we look to behaviorally.
So everything that the keepers had been saying of when we know that she is not ready to breed until she starts positively vocalizing, that is exactly by you just quantifying those behaviors. It seems to me that that is exactly correct. And that had direct implications for the care of these animals going forward, right?
It does, and largely because we want to learn from each other. We want to layer our sciences on top of each other, and that's why it's so great we can work behaviorally with the repro team, with the endocrine team, who focuses on this incredible hormone data. And we want to see how can we expand this. Maybe not everyone has access to the endocrine lab. But that's the basis. So we're standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm standing on the shoulders of our endocrine team, our repro team, our incredible keepers who have such rich knowledge about these animals. And we were able to find this particular pattern, but it's not always as clear cut as that. So there is one more chart somewhere in there. Perfect. Ever so slightly different colors, because why would I do it the same? But we do see that green line of the hormone, a blue line of the positive vocalizations. But do you see these little blips in the positive vocalizations early on?
Yeah.
We did too, but when you're living in the moment, you don't know that it's going to turn back down.
Right.
So we saw one, like a pre-peak in the original data, and then it skyrocket. So it's that one you're on now, that second blip, we thought it was going to skyrocket then. So we were almost ready to pull the trigger on deciding when to inseminate based on this. But we all spoke about it together. We saw the changes and readjusted.
That's great. And so this is a totally different year, but again, we see that same trend, that green line of those hormones increasing at the same time as those positive vocalizations. So that's just great. Folks watching at home, you absolutely got it. But I do bet that a lot of people don't know what Panda vocalizations sound like. And again, I just want to, go back to the importance of knowing the animal that you're working with or studying, right? Because if we are about to hear this, would you have known that this is a positive or an affiliative vocalization? Let's take a listen. That is what we call a bleat. Let's listen to it one more time. So that is the positive vocalization you were listening for?
Yes, that, and there's chirps, and sometimes she vocalizes, and it's a combination of angry, which we might loosely refer to, and then the happier sound. So we know they're coming. We just have to listen out for them particularly well.
That's really, really cool. So again, this is just such a great example of Betsy's work, the research that she conducts, that is having direct implications on the science and the care of these animals. So again, from this photo, we know that this behavior of her becoming more affiliative that we notice and observe matches the science of the best time of her hormones are telling us for implantation or for breeding. I want to go back to the vocalizations and again, talk about the importance of just knowing your animals, because we have a couple other vocalizations from some great apes, actually, that are just so fun. And let's quiz our audience here on whether they think that they are positive or a negative vocalization, affiliative or maybe an aggressive. So this first one is our gibbon, a gibbon we used to have named Muneka. All right, if folks want to put in the chat what you think is happening in this vocalization, or if you think it's a positive or a negative vocalization. Maya said positive.
Weird.
It's a weird one. Maya also said, I think I hear him eating. Colin also said eating. What's happening here, Betsy?
Yes, you guys are spot on. She is eating. She's eating a grape, and Mooney loves herself a grape. So that was positive food vocalizations. It was happy sounds. And I like to think of it when we would maybe mimic her, be like, oh, And so that was, definitely not evil sounds, but really kind of more of the positive ones that were happening there.
I often do a little happy dance when I'm eating chicken nuggets. Mm-hmm. That's probably the same thing. All right, here is a gorilla vocalization. Let's listen. All right, what do we think? Positive, negative? Oh, we see a happy, an afraid, says Anisha. All right, kind of all over the map here.
Yeah, right. All those question marks was perfect for that one, defending territory. So we think of this as kind of, it's a grunting, barking sound. And from, there we go.
Yeah.
And this is Mandara Gorilla. She's not the biggest fan of me. So this was directed towards me. If I'm not doing something for her that benefits her, why am I there? So she was telling me she didn't need me, essentially there. So I would put that in more of the negative category, but also productive.
Yes. And we have one more, I think. That's an interesting guess. We had Mahi say thumping, or a thumping chest. We saw moving around, more question marks. Again, so these are 3 different ape species, but very different, but also sound a little bit similar. What's happening in this one?
So this is Baraka and Kabibi. Baraka's the one in the picture. He's our big silverback, and he was playing with Kabibi, who was a youngster. So those sounds you heard in the background was hay rustling as they were kind of wrestling and playing together. So you hear a little bit of the kind of a slight laughter, slight kind of chuckling, and then you can even hear one of their happiness grumbles, if you will, sometimes called a pleasure grumble, where it's like, I'm not sure if that came through in the mic, but
absolutely,
you can definitely hear it from our gorilla friends.
That's so great. So again, just a wonderful point of there's so many slight differences in animal behavior. So tackling a concept like making our animals happy and healthy, you really have to know just so much and turn to the species experts to know what is a happy sound, a happy giggle and a rustle in a hay, or a happy animal eating a grape versus one that's saying, I'm not super happy in this situation. Betsy specifically, please back up.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, me specifically. And when I joined the giant panda team for the brief window of estrus, I don't know how many times I had to ask, wait, what was that sound good? Which one was that sound? And we all had to agree. So there was that, like getting on the same page about what things were.
Absolutely.
Call that English, yes.
So we talked about obviously making our animals here at the zoo happy and healthy. Your research that you do has huge implications on our animals here. How does your work and your job and your career impact the greater conservation of species outside the zoo, species living in the wild?
That's a really big question because we are conservation organizations. We're trying to build a better world for animals and for ourselves. And animal welfare, what I do, what our keepers do, what our vets do, we do the core work that really is the window to conservation. When we have public facing zoos and visitors come to us, we know from social science research that they won't listen to our conservation stories unless they feel comfortable that our animal welfare is okay. So that's what it's this gateway to hearing all of our conservation stories and what we do.
That's great. So who are you solely responsible for welfare of our animals? Whose job is it to make sure that our animals have great welfare?
It's everyone, every single person in the zoo. I'm just one piece of this puzzle. And I'm very fortunately get to spend the bulk of my time working on these things. And so we want to have a couple examples to show you. And sometimes it's in the tiny parts of our day, the things that people don't even see. These are some of our keepers and folks who work in animal care sciences who are doing huge things for huge animals. This is Spike. I think we clocked him at around 13,000 pounds at one point. And this is a big guy. He's going to be moving huge, big things. Elephants are built to fell trees, to knock them down in the wild. And so you can see over here by size, the person on the left is definitely taller than me. You can see them hooked in and they're putting gigantic tractor truck tires on a big, I can't even think of the word for it, that would just shoot down the way so they can use their big body and weight to move it around. And we think about this from a huge scale of an elephant all the way to our teeniest, tiniest animals, the Perdido key beach mice. They weigh 10 grams, which is about the weight of 2 nickels. So just think about 2 nickels together. That's our teeniest, tiniest animal. How do you make enrichment for that animal? How do you treat them medically when they're so teeny tiny? I want to whisper when I talk about them. And so it's this huge range that we really have to focus on. And there's so many more things. Right. What else can we talk about with this one? Oh, from other things the keepers are doing, this one is just such a lovely creative way to keep animals safe and happy. This is a red siskin, so a teeny tiny bird. So if you look in the tree, kind of in the center and the top, you can see some of the individuals there. And if we want to be able to separate one individual for a vet procedure or for some other purpose, we can't just grab them. They're too delicate. We're too strong, we'll say. So a keeper developed this small crate with a very light foam door, and she needed to not be there. So if you look at the yellow box on the right of this screen, you're going to see a key fob for a car. They took the mechanics of the locking mechanism for a car, put it into that small cage, and then all they had to do was press a button and the locking mechanism would pull the pin out, and that foam core door would just gently fall down, safely separating an individual. And that's innovative animal management. We talk to each other across other zoos so these ideas can be shared and we can learn from others, like in this case.
That's such a great example. And I don't even need to, one of the areas we didn't even talk about today was how you use science, technology, engineering, art, and math in your career. But really, this is it. I mean, you're using technology, as we saw with the Panda cams, to technology and the iPads that you're using to create the apps that are monitoring those or to take data on their behaviors. Technology in this garage door car fob, it's just fantastic. And engineering here too, right? Engineering this mechanism to make it the door fall like that. It's just super, super fascinating. We've heard about so many of these projects, and I do want to launch another poll here for our audience at home of, you've heard a lot of Betsy's different projects that she's had the chance to partake in or lead. What would you be most interested in researching in animals? Would you be interested in continuing research in tool use or reproduction? We have nesting or cognition. We've touched on so much. And it's just been so incredible, Betsy, to hear all about how important it is to make sure our animals are happy, just like it's so important to make sure that our humans are happy as well, and how you improve their lives here at the zoo and in the wild. And before we move on to our awesome Q&A, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this career? What is the path that you took and how did you end up here?
That's a great question. And everyone's path that I work with in a zoo is different, whether you've majored in psychology, biology, animal science, education, anthropology, or maybe you chose not to go to a university. There's so many different paths to get where we are. When I knew I wanted to study animals, that was my firm non-negotiable. I didn't understand what my options were and what the different career fields were other than being a veterinarian.
Yeah.
So I had a chance to chat with our local vet at home and I realized this is not for me. This is not the way I need to go. And as I was approaching college, I started watching with my family because we're all a little bit more of an academic nature. On PBS, there were the Scientific American Frontiers episodes hosted by Alan Alda, and he started exploring concepts of how animals think with Sally Boyson's chimps, Diana Reese's dolphins. And I thought, holy cow, I want to do that. I want to learn a whole lot more of that.
And just
And
can I pause you right there? We did have a question from Daniel about what cognition is, and that is just it, right? How animals think.
Exactly. It's how they process information.
Right.
So we do it, they do it, and that's a window into learning about them. Exactly. So once I started learning about how there's all of these other careers that could be possible was right when I was going to college. I decided to major in psychology because I was very interested in behavior. I happened to be at a university across the street from the Bronx Zoo. So I started volunteering to learn even more about what you can do, what the different options are. Towards the end of college, I came back to Washington, D.C. to visit with my grandparents, came to the National Zoo right here, went to a think tank demonstration. Think tank is our exhibit that's all about how animals think, just by the title. And I went to an orangutan research demo, watched the biologist have them answer questions with different technology. At the time, it was a little bit more about language research, and I was hooked. I thought, I want to get into the mind and learn a whole lot more about that. And curiously, I guess it was probably 12 years later, I worked here. So that was really exciting.
That's such an incredible path. And for you to just have that moment of it click and be like, I want to continue studying this and learning all that you can. That's great.
And it wasn't just that. I just do want to add in that there were so many steps in between and so many people that helped guide and direct and support me to get to this point. So after my undergraduate years, I was I've had a chance to be in many universities. So I went to Fordham University for my undergrad, Hunter for my master's degree, also in New York, getting to continue to work at the Bronx Zoo. I went to be a gorilla keeper at the Gorilla Foundation for a little bit in between. And then I moved to Scotland to work at the University of Stirling and Edinburgh Zoo with chimps on my PhD. I got to do a documentary with the BBC. So I had a cameraman filming my whole PhD, at least the first year. So I'd like to joke there's a lot of stress of me on camera somewhere. And I've had the luxury of working with so many different species and learning from keepers and the people working with them. Of course, it's heavy on primates. And I had a chance to really think about how things work in different countries and different organizations by working and even contracting and volunteering at other organizations down at the bottom. I do see that my dad just added to the chat. So hi, Dad. And if I weren't from a completely massive nerdy family, and I say that with the highest respect because I think that's a great quality to have, I decided that the best way to talk about what my interests are is to think about it in a Venn diagram. So my happy place is when we think about cognition. So that's how animals think, animal management, how we care for them, and their welfare, how they tell us how they're experiencing their world.
That is the perfect summation of, I think, your position here at the zoo and why it's so important. I realize that we are just at about 50 minutes, and I realize that some students and teachers might have other classes to go to. So I'm going to quickly launch just our closing poll here about how you felt about today's program and how it left you feeling. And let's jump into our amazing Q&A, which keep those questions coming. Again, we'll try to get to as many as we can here.
We should probably talk about this.
Oh, yes, we should absolutely talk about this quickly before the Q&A. Who is
All right.
Lily and what are we doing with Lily in this picture?
So Lily is a cat that I've been very fortunate to spend the past year and a half with. She came to me right before the pandemic. So she was with me throughout this whole Panda experience. And we were at home waiting for the Panda birth. So this is May in the video in labor, and we were waiting and waiting. And Lily, my coworker, joined me for a little bit of it. So she's a team player, just like everyone else.
Fantastic. Great. So Anish has asked, what do you do if you're unsure if an animal is happy or potentially sad or any other emotion?
That's a fantastic question, because often we don't know and we're still trying to figure it out. So we need to lean on things that we do know about them. And we will think about the basics of animal welfare, thinking about their environment, their nutrition, their healthcare, their behavior. How are they responding in those areas from what we do know? And if we're still unsure, we have to keep watching and monitoring. And that's where working with keepers and the people who work with them every single day is your best friend.
Great. Adine asked, is your job fun? And what are your most fun aspects of your job that you like?
My job is fun. Sometimes it's not fun. Sometimes I'm sitting in front of a computer for weeks on end, trying to figure out a statistical problem, trying to figure out how to write the perfect wording of a paragraph to share with the public or in a scientific publication. Sometimes I do enjoy those things. Sometimes it just is a lot on your plate. The most fun I have is when I get to be sitting with animals. And even more fun is when what we've been doing together to figure out information about them works. When we can see a behavioral change in a positive direction because of something we've done. That's the most exciting time.
I love that, to see a product at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So we did have a question about my previous career as a zookeeper. We are focusing on Betsy today, but I do want to briefly say most keepers and a lot of people in the zoo field, regardless of our current positions, really started as volunteers. So if you are interested in working, hands-on with animals, we always encourage folks to start when they can and where they can. So getting as much of that hand-on experience, I was fortunate enough to volunteer on Asia Trail here at the National Zoo before getting hired as a keeper, and I interned as well. But yeah, if you have a vet's office close by, or perhaps a kennel or a local farm asking to volunteer, or when you're old enough to work there, part-time, full-time, intern, absolutely.
I also started as a volunteer, so
Yeah.
I second that. And if you happen to be in school, that's a wonderful time to do it when you're able to have all the support of folks around you, including your school.
Oh, and Marin said that her mom used to volunteer here. That's fantastic. We are getting a ton of questions, which, what is your favorite animal, Betsy, and why?
Oh, it's like I imagine parents feel about your favorite children. My go-to is chimpanzees. There you can see there's a painting of one in the back. This is Emma. I worked with her at Edinburgh Zoo several years ago. So chimps hold a very special place in my heart because they are, they wear their emotions on their sleeve. They're often at a 10. This is me with Ricky. Please know that there is glass between us. I have been fortunate to do a lot of research with chimpanzees to talk about the behavior in their mind. There's the cover of a book here from the Chimpanzees in Context conference from years ago. Been fortunate to write a chapter on how chimps are introduced to each other and can we look for predictors of success, from personality profiles to how they behave when they meet, to if we do video introductions, can that predict how they behave, because it can be potentially volatile and aggressive. So they're the special place in my heart.
That's really, really fascinating. Noah had a question about animals, how animals come to the zoo, which most of the animals that we have here are either born here or come from other zoos. But I'd love to know, Betsy, how does animal welfare play a role in what animals we either bring to the zoo or what animals we currently have at the zoo?
Animal welfare is the basis, the foundation of everything our animal managers are thinking about when they decide to bring in or send out an animal. We have a great network of zoos where we have loans and we'll work together to bring in a keeper over to train with us before an animal goes to live in a new location or vice versa. And it goes from, we think about their well-being the entire time, from should they go to how do we make it happen? Can we train them to be comfortable in a transport crate? How long is that journey and what do we need to do to make them feel comfortable throughout? How do we help them acclimate to their new environment? So we plan a lot. And in case plan A doesn't work, we will have plan B ready to go, because that's what excellence in animal care is. And we really work on that a lot at this institution. I'm actually in a class right now through our Zoological Association, AZA, on animal transports. So we can learn about, with my colleagues who are also taking it, how do we have better discussions about welfare in transports? That's why I'm attending.
I feel like that's such a common thing in the zoo field in general. How do we continue to make this better?
100%.
For everyone working here, better for all of the animals in our care. That's great. Let's see what other questions we have. Do you always make animals work for their food and or rewards?
Ooh, that's very insightful. And I like that you're thinking about that, because if we always had to work for our food, would we like that? Does it matter what we like and experience? And for some of our animals, they do not. They will get free food, they have access to it. But we also do like to provide the opportunity for animals to work for food. Our marine mammals get fed through training sessions. They're highly engaged. It is a great opportunity for keepers to see them, to examine them behaviorally and visually. And so they are primarily fed through training sessions, and that's another way to engage them mentally. For our great apes and other species, it's more of a mixed approach where they will have a free opportunity to eat. They don't have to work for it. But we also know they want to work for food. We call that contra freeloading, where you can test this out with your animals at home. If you have a dish where they could just freely eat from it, versus maybe putting some of their diet and their food in a feeder ball, a puzzle, something where they have to think how to get it out. And often animals will choose the contra freeloading option and work for that food.
That's great. Let's see, we had another great question in here that I think that we will end with. I'm sorry we didn't get to all your amazing questions. Genevieve had a question of your favorite animal moment. And I'm sure you have thousands to pick from.
I'm gonna think, my brain is a little bit biased right now because I saw that picture of Ricky chimpanzee. So I'm going to go back to the Rickster. He was an older fella who had a different beginning to life. He was the mascot of a merchant Navy ship. He didn't necessarily know how to be a chimp. He was very invested in people. And I just remember the way he would look at you and be very interested in all of your features. I happen to have very white tips to my nails, so he would want to look at them and see as closely as possible things that are different, things that are the same. He would tend to look at things that were different. For keepers, if they had tattoos, he would want to find out what was underneath. But just those moments of having the privilege of being so close to watching an animal think, but close in a safe way. I would never feel comfortable going in with a chimpanzee because they're so much stronger than we are.
Yes.
So how can we have these incredible experiences in a safe way, both physically and psychologically for animals and for us? That those are probably some of my warm and fuzzy moments that I have the most.
That's fantastic. Betsy, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on today's program. I have learned so much about your career, about animal welfare, about the research that's happening here at the National Zoo. Any final words for all of our viewers watching from school or from home or from their personal devices?
I just want to say thank you so much for being interested in zoo careers and animal welfare specifically. We talked about how it's not just me at the zoo, it's everyone at the zoo. And it's even more than that. It's all of you at home, whether you're interacting with your pets at home, you're being a good zoo visitor, you're in a park and there are wild animals all around you. The more information we learn together, the better environment we can create for animals, not just physically, but how we think and culturally how we go about it. So I'm so glad we had a chance to talk through a bit more about what we do at the National Zoo. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Betsy. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you will join us for another installment of UnZOOsual Careers. Our next one will be Friday, December 3rd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Additionally, we have an additional program next week, Life Cycles of the Smooth and Scaly, both best suited for K through 5. That'll be next Wednesday, November 10th at 1 p.m. Information about that, both of those upcoming programs will be on our website. We would love your feedback on today's program. You will see a survey both in the chat and it will automatically pop up in your browser when we close the program. So educators, teachers, if you have a few minutes to spare, we would love your feedback. And to catch up on all of the previous UnZOOsual Career episodes, check out our YouTube playlist. On behalf of the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute, we hope you have a wild day.